Well, folks, Jon Ossoff could very easily be crushed in the 2026 Senate race in Georgia. Ossoff, who is running for his first re-election and is considered the most vulnerable Democrat up for re-election in 2026. To make matters worse for the Democrats, this was also a state that was won by President Trump in 2024. So stick around to the end of this video if you want to know what Republican has the best chance of winning against Jon Ossoff in the upcoming race. But before we get into it, drop down below, hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss another video again from us in the future. So now, we all know that Georgia federally is a swing state. It's a purpley state that voted for President Trump in 2016, voted for Biden by about 11,000 votes in 2020, and then back to President Trump in 2024. But on the state level, we know it is a lean red state. In the 2022 midterms, which was historically a pretty bad year for Republicans, even though the Democrats were the party in power, and they did win the House, the Republicans, not a great year historically for Republicans in 2022, but there were a few specks of a red wave throughout the country. One of those specks was in Florida, where you had Governor DeSantis win re-election by upwards of 1.5 million votes after only winning the first time by 30,000 votes. And then Brian Kemp in Georgia, who he won his initial election in 2018 against Stacey Abrams by about a point. Went on to win in 2022 against Stacey Abrams again by almost 8 points in that election. So we know it is a lean red state on the federal or on the state level. On the federal level, much more of a swing state. And Georgia currently has 2 Democrat senators in D.C. Right now, we know Raphael Warnock was unfortunately reelected in 22 against Herschel Walker, but primaries will be held in the summer of 2026 for Jon Ossoff's seat, and I expect some big names to jump in this race, because for the Republicans, this is a must-win state. Must win. Top priority, because we know in 2022, Senator Raphael Warnock was running for re-election to serve a full six-year term because he won the special election in 2020. Trump decided to back Herschel Walker instead of a more established Republican candidate in the state, former Senator David Perdue, who was much more likely to win this election by almost every metric that we had at the time. But due to the poor quality of the candidate, Raphael Warnock won re-election barely, and at the same time, that same election that Brian Kemp won by 8 points in, Raphael Warnock won by like a point. Well, it's like, this just shows candidate quality matters. We cannot F around with it this election. If we want to win, if we want to increase our majority in the Senate, you cannot F around with this. We saw what good, solid, just look at Pennsylvania. Trump decided to endorse Mehmet Oz in 2022. Dr. Oz lost to basically someone who is brain dead, literally. It's like, I like John Fetterman, but he literally had a stroke and did not have the complete capability or functions of his brain. And he won the election against Mehmet Oz. Dave McCormick, who ran in the primary and lost to Mehmet Oz, went on to win in 2024 against an incumbent senator in Bob Casey and beat him by, 40,000 votes? So it just shows poor candidate quality equals Democrats winning. Good candidate quality statewide means the Republicans win. Just look at what happened in Arizona too. Carrie Lake ran for the Senate against an unpopular Democrat in the state of Arizona, a state that voted for Trump by like 4 or 5 points. And Carrie Lake still lost because of poor candidate quality. Poor candidate quality. You could go on and on and on. Look at what happened in Ohio with Bernie Moreno. You had a popular Democrat in Sherrod Brown running for re-election, was defeated by a good, strong candidate that has good qualities and statewide ability to win electoral races. Look at Montana. We could go on for an hour about how candidate quality matters. But flipping the other Senate seat in Georgia is a top priority for Senate Republicans in 2026, and Ossoff is seen as the most vulnerable Democrat in 2026. And the reality is that Jon Ossoff is just the right candidate to pick off. He sided with Democrats and voted against the legislation that would keep men out of women's sports, even though upwards of 80% of the country opposes that. But somehow, Democrats unanimously have voted against it. He also just voted against the GOP bill that would fund the government until the end of September. He wanted a government shutdown. Even some of the top party leaders I think there were 10 senators who voted in favor of this, or voted to invoke cloture so the Republicans could pass the bill. We know he voted against this bill that would avoid a government shutdown, that we could have very easily been in a government shutdown if the Democrats didn't play ball. But, Schumer has, I think he's a bad guy, but obviously he's not that stupid, because he knew that this was political suicide, to close down the government, because it would 100% be pinned on him. And added with the fact that big social media influencers like DC Drano and Riley Gaines have publicly stated they are on a mission to make sure that he does not win re-election in 2026. And now for the big piece of the equation here. All of those things make kind of stir the pot up for a good, strong candidate to swoop in this race on the Republican side and win this election. And that person is Brian Kemp. It is very, very fair to say that if Brian Kemp is in this race, he will beat Jon Ossoff. The combination of the political baggage that Jon Ossoff is carrying, plus a very strong candidate in Brian Kemp in this race, could just be the right mixture to knock Ossoff off in this race. Kemp is a big, big part of this equation. He is well known in Georgia. He is very well liked in Georgia. His last approval rating, he was over water or above water by like 30 points. Let's see if we can find. I know there was just a poll that came out recently. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Recent poll just came out last month. 64% of people approve of Brian Kemp, 31% disapprove. You can't get half the country, you can't get the majority of the country to agree on something by a 2/3 majority. But somehow they know that Brian Kemp is very popular. Very popular. And he can win statewide elections. That's what we need. We need a Republican who can win statewide elections. Look at what happened in Georgia. You'll look at 2018. You'll look at 2022. 2018, Brian Kemp beat Stacey Abrams by roughly 1.5 points. We're looking at what? 50,000, a little over 50,000 votes. He went on to win in 22, like we said, which was not a good year for Republicans, in the same race. Like literally, Brian Kemp was at the top of the ballot in 2022. Raphael Warnock was also on that ballot. Somehow, people went in and voted for Brian Kemp by 8 points, 7.5 points, and then voted for Raphael Warnock by a point, which, just shows candidate quality matters. Brian Kemp was able to take Georgia from a very slim race in 2018 to a pretty healthy margin in the 2022 election. He is very popular in Georgia, and we cannot let what happens in 2022 happen again. This is a winnable seat, and the National Republicans are going to spend a lot of money on this state. They're going to spend a lot of money. This is the top target where they're going on offensive. There's 2 states where there are Democrat senators up for re-election that President Trump won in 24. Michigan, Gary Peters is not running for re-election, and Pete Buttigieg isn't going to jump in that race either, it now sounds like. So you may have Haley Stevens, who is the congressional Democrat from Michigan, may be jumping in the race. And I think also potentially the Attorney General in Michigan is going to jump in the race, but Gretchen Whitmer is not going to jump in the race. Buttigieg and Whitmer looking towards 2028. But look, and then the other seat is Georgia. Trump won Georgia by about 2.5 points in 2024. Jon Ossoff up for re-election. And there are some pretty good signs that Brian Kemp could do very well in this race. Great piece from the New York Times from about a month ago about Georgia, and their first Jewish senator, Jon Ossoff, who's a Democrat, is losing huge amounts of Jewish support. They go down here to say, and this is in Georgia in the metropolitan area, a bipartisan group of leaders in the metropolitan Atlanta Jewish community. We humbly ask you to consider running for the United States Senate in 2026. Is what read in a private mid-December letter to Brian Kemp from some of the state's major political donors and Jewish community leaders that was reviewed by the New York Times. Should you decide, in the letter said, quote, should you decide to run in the 26th election, the letter said, you would find no better friends, more loyal allies, or stronger supporters than us and our community, which is huge. Huge. You're talking about a Democrat who is Jewish, who is now losing huge amounts of Jewish support and Jewish support among the donor class. just another reason. We all know the Jewish people are going to be able to very well fund Brian Kemp's campaign. The donors are going to throw a lot of money behind that. Especially with how John Ossoff, you want to talk about other baggage he has, let's talk about Israel, Israel-Hamas. He has been a Hamas sympathizer, a terrorist sympathizer since October 7th, 2023. It is insane what he did. He wanted to block arms deals to Israel to defend themselves. It's like he basically has just stopped short of blaming Israel for what's going on in the Middle East right now. Yes. No, it's Israel's fault, of course, because the only state in the Middle East that has relatively peace in it, who is continuously attacked by its neighbors, Hamas, a literal terrorist group that has been bombing Israel for 20 years since they came into power in 2004? It's like, what other state promotes Western values in the Middle East except for Israel? Like what other state? Like, honest to God, what other states are we going to have here? Like, you want to go over to the Middle East? Let's take a look at this over here. It is just insane. Who else do they have in this area? They got Jordan, has done nothing good for them. They've got Syria, done nothing good for them. They've got Iraq. They've got Saudi Arabia. Iran, who's basically been funding proxies to obliterate the state of Israel. Like, who else in the Middle East is promoting this? These Western values? No one. No one is. And we know, getting back to the 2026 race, Brian Kemp would win by 5, 6, 7 points. There was a recent poll taken that showed that Brian Kemp head-to-head with John Ossoff would win by about 6 points. And I'm wondering if we can find any of that polling on here. Brian Kemp, let's do polling. But there was a recent poll that was taken, head-to-head matchup. He would win right here by about 7 points. In this same race right here, in another poll, they found a double-digit lead for Brian Kemp when they were told that John Ossoff voted against a bill to keep women out of men's sports. No other Republican in the state even was beating Ossoff. A generic Democrat was running about 2 points behind John Ossoff in most of these polling. Brian Kemp was the only one who started off head-to-head above him, and then went to double digits when they were told that Ossoff voted against a bill that would keep mentally ill transgender women out of women's sports, women's locker rooms, and women's bathrooms. These are mentally ill men who are dressing up as chicks. It's just a total disgrace. There are two sexes, two biological sexes. There's male and there's female. They are not malleable. In any idea of your imagination, it's not malleable. You're either a male or you're a female. And as a government of common sense, we should recognize there are two genders. There are two sexes. And those cannot be changed. It's not about how you feel on the inside. It's about biologically. What do your chromosomes say? Biologically, what are you? But right now, we are 20 months out from this race. We'll be here to keep you updated along the way. Anything that comes out in this race when Brian Kemp decides to jump in, whether he gives his official notice, what he's going to do, we're going to be here to bring you all that information. Don't forget to drop down below, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future.